Greetings and welcome to the channel. My name is Dr. Gyesie, transformational coach here at Inner Mileage, where we help folks understand the traumatic roots of their limiting self-beliefs so they can get over them and take inspired action to live resonant lives right here. Today we're talking about the journey from the ego to the heart, how escaping narcissistic abuse enables you to enter this non-dual phase. And importantly, you realize that when you escape from narcissistic abuse, you don't just free yourself from the person. You actually don't. You unplug yourself from an entire illusion. And you begin the movement from the mind to the heart, from ego to essence, from separation to non-duality. This isn't just psychological healing and awakening, it's really a spiritual awakening. So let's talk a little bit about the ego construct and narcissistic abuse. So most people live in the mind, specifically the ego. And the ego is not evil. In fact, it's simply a structure, a psychic survival mechanism. And it is inherently dualistic, meaning it lives on comparison, judging, competition, conditional identities, and fixing things. Such as, I am worthy because I am praised. I am lovable because I am needed. I am safe because I am compliant. And narcissists target this egoic software. They weaponize your need to be seen or validated. In fact, research shows that the narcissist's entire psychic structure is built on a fragile ego regulation. It really is. And they need others to reflect back a grandiose self-image, and they choose empaths because empaths are master reflectors. So when you are with a narcissist, they hijack your ego's needs and feed you just enough attention to stay addicted, and just enough rejection to stay insecure. And that push-pull dynamic, it wires your nervous system for hypervigilance and codependency. And you stop hearing your heart, you become a prisoner of your mind. So how does this lead to trauma, fragmentation, and your quantum self? See, when you endure narcissistic abuse, you don't just get hurt, which you do, but you do get fragmented. And the self splits into sub-personalities to survive. You become the pleaser, the hyperachiever, the fixer. And these parts override your soul's voice. In fact, trauma rewires the brain's default mode network. It really does. And disconnects the prefrontal cortex and locks you into this fight-flight limbic system. But here's where it gets cosmic. See, according to Joe Dispenza, who I really respect, and the Heart Mind Institute, their research show that your thoughts and emotions emit electromagnetic signals, meaning the brain emits measurable frequencies, but the heart's electromagnetic field is up to 5,000 times stronger in magnetic amplitude compared to the brain. Meaning, when you're stuck in mental trauma loops, your signal is weak. But when you drop into the heart, you become coherent and a radiant field. In other words, you cannot be scared when you're grateful. Do you see the analogy there? So you realize that trauma isn't just psychological, it's energetic misalignment. And healing isn't just therapy, it's frequency correction. So let's talk about the power of the heart from a physiological, spiritual, and quantum perspective. The heart is not just a symbol, but it's the central intelligence of the body and the soul, if you may, if you think there is a self in that way. As I mentioned earlier, the heart has its own nervous system with over 40,000 neurons, if you can understand that, which send more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Therefore, it has memory, the heart, intuition, and pattern recognition. So when people say trust your heart, they're not being poetic. They are being neurologically accurate. For example, in Buddhism, the heart mind is known as chitta, which is the pure luminous mind. And in Christianity, the heart is where the Holy Spirit dwells. In Sufism, the qalb, or the heart, is a center of divine knowing. And in Kabbalah, the heart is the Tiferet, the balance between love and judgment. So you know that the heart is the original temple. And when the heart enters coherence, meaning your emotional state, breath, and intention align, your electromagnetic field expands and you become a tuning fork for love, clarity, and divine presence. This is why narcissists try to shut down your heart, because a coherent heart cannot be controlled. So, what is it like moving from the mind to the heart? How do you make that journey? What's that spiritual initiation process like? See, moving from the mind to the heart is not a mindset shift. Though that helps, it's a death and resurrection, a beginning and an end. And the reason why most people stay in their heads is because the mind is linear. It feels safe and it makes sense. Whereas the heart is non-linear because it speaks in paradox, feeling, intuition, and truths that cannot be easily explained. In fact, the Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, describes the heart warrior Arjuna breaking down the battlefield, not because he lacked skill, because he's a very skillful warrior, but because his heart had awakened and he could no longer kill without conscience. That's the spiritual crisis of awakening. And when you escape narcissistic abuse, the mind wants to retaliate, but the heart wants to transform. It wants to grieve, it wants to love, it wants to integrate, and it wants to choose freedom over vengeance. In fact, using Carl Jung's framework, the journey of awakening or individuation is about integrating the shadow and returning to the self, which Jung often linked to his heart archetype. So this is really your initiation from thinking to knowing, as we are in the age of Aquarius, from needing to being, because you're a human being, not a human needing, and from attachment to awareness, because that's what you truly are, an aware, conscious being. So how do you get into this non-dual state, this place beyond victimhood and identity? I am not the story. I am not even the one who escaped. I am a witness behind it all. See, non-duality is the collapse of the subject-object illusion. It's the realization that there is no me and no you. And there is, but fundamentally there isn't. There's only consciousness. Only consciousness expressing itself in form. Only consciousness expressing itself in form. And when you were in narcissistic abuse, it felt like there was a predator and you were the victim. And yes, at the egoic level, that was true. But at the non-dual level, the narcissist is simply a mirror. That's it. A karmic catalyst, a necessary archetype to awaken your soul from amnesia. In fact, in Advaita Vedanta, the great sage Ramana Maharshi would often say that ego is a phantom that disappears when the light of the self is turned on. In Taoism, there's a saying that the sage does not resist. The sage flows with what is, and in doing so becomes one with the way. So escaping the narcissist is not the end, it's the beginning of seeing. There was no one to escape, only parts of you that needed integration. And in the heart, all polarities dissolve. There's no enemy, no shame, only love reclaiming itself. So why is escaping at initiation, not just survival? And by the way, if any of these resonate with you, type transform in the comment section and let us know your experience. So escaping narcissistic abuse is not a badge of survival, it's spiritual initiation. Because like the phoenix, you didn't just fly away, you burn. And you lose your identity, your certainty, your world, and you arise with new wings. This is why you were chosen, because your heart has the capacity not just to survive, but to transform darkness into light. So this call to adventure you're on is really the Saturnian test. It forces the soul to grow, your soul to grow, your inner being, through structure, resistance, and pain. And the reward is sovereignty. You become the alchemist, the embodied healer, the sovereign being. So the truth is, you don't have to stay in the mind, you don't have to play trauma, you are allowed to drop in the heart, which is the place beyond thought, fear, and illusion. And you're also allowed to grieve what happened, because that's how you release knowing that the heart is the final frontier and those who walk it are the new leaders of the new earth. If this resonates, recognize there's no one like you. Like, share, subscribe, and see you again soon.